is 9/11 Freefall.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of 9/11 Freefall. I am the host, Andy Steele. Tonight, the guest is Marvin Sannes. He's an activist with AE911Truth, and he is the guy who went before the Portland City Council talking about Building 7, bringing the evidence to the city council members, and this is a great idea. I think we should spread it all over the country. Imagine if city councils all over America adopted a resolution calling for a new investigation into the destructions of the Twin Towers in Building 7 on 9/11. Would have great symbolic power. So I want to see everybody listening to this broadcast emulate what Marvin has done, and he's a very interesting, cool guy. You're going to like this interview, and I'm going to actually play a clip of Marvin before the city council before I start the interview tonight. So before I do play that clip and the interview, we're going to do what we do every week. We're going to take 10 seconds of silence to remember the victims of 9/11 and their families and all the people who died in the wars that followed 9/11. We'll do that beginning now. And that is 10 seconds.
So welcome everyone. Let's take up the first communications item, number 815.
Request of Marvin Sannes to address council regarding destruction of World Trade Center 7.
Good morning. Welcome.
Good morning. I'm Marvin Sannes. I'm at 15.
Mr. Davis, excuse me, you're not called yet. Please just sit down.
I thought I could sit here.
No, have a seat. Sorry, go ahead, sir.
No, I guess I can do whatever.
I'm Marvin Sannes. I'm at 1515 Northeast Tomahawk Island Drive in Portland. I'm starting with a 1-minute video that I'm going to ask you to watch carefully, please.
Third time dead. When you listen to those pictures, we've all seen too much of television before. A building was deliberately destroyed by well-placed gunmen to knock it down.
Did they actually use the word broadband, and who was it that was telling you this?
The fire department, and they did use the word, we're going to have to bring it down.
This sounds like a class thunder. It looks like there's a shockwave ripping through the building, and the windows all busted out. About a second later, the bottom floor caved out. The building followed after that, and the building crashed down all the way to the ground. And I turned it on to take what looked like a factory for demolition. It looked like it's been done by demolition crew. The whole thing just collapsing down.
It was almost as if they were planning to expose it. It just pancaked.
Thank you. I'm going to let it run on mute. This was a painful moment for all of us, almost 14 years ago. This building's roof line makes a symmetrical transition from complete support to the complete absence of support instantly. This is measured by physics professionals. The building's fall accelerates at the speed of free fall through the path of greatest resistance, 40,000 tons of structural steel. The 47th floor reached the street in 6.8 seconds. This steel frame structure was completely dismembered. 5.8% of this unique dust from the event is composed of microscopic iron spheres, droplets of molten iron that had to have been sprayed into the air to form. This required temperatures far, far higher than could be achieved by office fires. Office fires and thermal expansion of beams are what the Commerce Department tell us were the cause of this building's destruction. Office fires and thermal expansion are asymmetrical phenomenon. This is obviously a symmetrical event. There are witnesses and measurements of molten steel in the rubble pile that continued to burn into December. This building was reported collapsed or collapsing, quotes, by CNN an hour before it collapsed, and reported collapsed, I'm quoting, by BBC 20 minutes before its destruction.
We appreciate you bringing this to our attention, and thank you for coming today.
Let me just finish with one sentence. Less than 1 in 7 Americans has seen this building collapse. We are beginning our 15th year of war. We lose 8,000 soldiers to suicide every year. Every year we lose 8,000 soldiers to suicide. We need to have a dialogue about our behavior. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Okay, next please, 816.
Marvin Sannes is a volunteer with AE911Truth. He's been very active in his time with the group, including speaking to his city council in Portland, Oregon, which you guys can see on YouTube. Marvin, welcome to 9/11 Freefall.
Yes, thank you, Andy. Very glad to be here. Very glad to do this.
Now, tell our audience more about yourself. Let them know who is the guy they're listening to, the guy in the YouTube video speaking to the Portland officials.
Well, I'm 70 years old. I grew up in Oregon and the Willamette Valley. I've spent my whole life here. I spent a year in California and a year at the University of Utah, but I was at Portland State for 10 years, and I've been active in my community my whole life. I graduated from Portland State in social sciences and have taken an interest in the health of my community my whole life. I'm a sailor and a voracious reader. I've had 4 children. I've got 2 grandchildren. I've got 2 old English cars in my garage and a backyard full of sailboats, in addition to a 38-footer that's now on the Columbia River. I've been an ocean sailor for 20 years. A golfer and a skier, and I'm very lucky. I'm 70 and I'm still active and healthy, and this 9/11 activism is kind of one of those things I often I wish I had not have discovered the truth of 9/11. My life was so much simpler before I found out how terrible America has become. So I think silence about these wars is criminal, and for some of us it is suicidal, and I'm one of the people that it's suicide. If I didn't talk about this stuff, it would kill me. So and it has been a pleasant surprise, and Robert Kennedy, in his Cape Town speech, talks about the 4 things that make it difficult for social justice, social activists. Moral courage is the most difficult. But he said, when you undertake this difficult work, you're going to find people like you all over the world. And that has been one of the joys of this 9/11 Truth movement, that I found people like me, activists, people who care about this stuff, all over the world. And that has been a pleasant surprise for me. So,
well, people talk about this like it's a mystical, fantastic thing. If you do action, you'll find other like-minded people, almost like there's something supernatural about it, but there isn't. It's basically common sense. If you like karate, you go out and learn karate, take classes, you're going to find other people who have the same interests. Same thing with 911Truth. So nobody should really feel alone, even though there's a lot of people out in the general public of the United States and in the world who choose to stay asleep to this, who, even if they wake up to the reality of what happened on 9/11, may choose to take the path of apathy and just staying focused on whatever's going on in their immediate life. But there's a lot of people who have answered the call, and a lot more who are waking up as we move forward and exposing the truth about that day, and we're making a lot of strides in that. So you just uttered a universal truth, and I agree with you. And you also mentioned that you've got the grandkids. Now I'm stealing a line from a movie that just came out, but it is applicable. It's not about saving our world; it's about protecting theirs. And I think that is something that is in the back of our minds here in the 9/11Truth movement, even for people like myself who don't have any kids. What's the point of existence if not to leave something for the next generation? And that is our way of having realistic immortality, because what we leave here in the civilization gets carried on by the generations that follow. So we have every reason to expose 9/11, because then 9/11, as I've said so many times, is the linchpin on which a lot of this post-9/11 world that is bothering us right now is based on. Now, you said that, you might have been happier had you not waken up to this. How did you wake up to the 9/11Truth information?
Well, I saw, on 9/11, the evening of 9/11, I did see Building 7 come down, and I did see a list of the tenants of that building, and I can distinctly remember thinking to myself, yeah, there's no question, those sons of bitches, look what they did. But the event was on the East Coast, and 3 days later, when the Bush declared war from the pulpit of the National Cathedral, I can distinctly remember thinking the same thing. Here they go again, another war. Well, we've been at war my whole life. It was not personable to me. 2 weeks after 9/11, my 20-year-old son, Eric, took his life. He and 3 of his buddies spent 9/11 watching television in our living room. And I would go in, and I couldn't watch any of that. After I saw the first jumper, that morning I was at the golf course playing cards, and I saw that first jumper. And I got up and said, I can't watch this. I'm leaving. And I left. When I got home, I watched in and out of the living room, and I kept watching these 20-year-old kids. At 9 o'clock in the morning, those 4 kids these were community college, pot-smoking skateboarders. And they were on their way on a fishing trip that morning. One guy was skipping his job. These other guys were skipping when they were going to go fishing. But they got stopped in the living room when 9/11 happened. At 9 o'clock, they were skateboarders. At 12:30, they were draftees. They began talking about war. They began talking about reinstituting the draft. We were going to go to war in Asia. That started right away. And I could see that this was having an effect on these kids. Eric had some other issues in his life. He was, an adolescent. He had experimented with drugs, but I blame 9/11. 9/11 was the catalyst for his fatal decision. Well, every year when we would get around to the anniversary of his death, I would do something specific for my grief process. It took me 3 years to 3 years of hard work to get a sense of recovery that I was going to survive his loss. At the 10th anniversary, every year I would do something specific for my grief process. But when we got to the 10th anniversary, I looked at something about 9/11 and I thought, I think I'm strong enough now. I can look at that stuff. What the hell happened? We're still at war in Asia. How can we be still be at war in these third world countries? What in the hell has happened? So I began to look, and I think I just Googled 9/11 and looked at the first thing that came up. And then within a few days, I ordered a David Ray Griffith's book and read the book. And, Andy, I'll bet you I've read 40 books in the last 3 years. David Chandler's analysis of World Trade Center 1 was probably the most convincing. I came to this thing kind of open-minded about it, but after a couple of books and Chandler's videos, it took about 2 months, and I became absolutely certain that this was the two buildings were exploded, the Building 7 was imploded, and the Pentagon was struck so that they could declare the crimes in Manhattan as an act of war, so that they could dodge the criminal investigation, the fire investigation, the NTB. They didn't have to follow the rule of law. They could say this is a war. And that's exactly why they shot that missile into the Pentagon and killed those people in that accounting office. Anyway, and I guess after, in the second year, I decided that I was going to run for the U.S. House of Representatives as an independent, and I primarily did that so I could speak openly about 9/11. That's the thing that upsets me the most about this. We don't have dialogue. I mean, God almighty, this is the most seminal event in this democracy's history, if you can still call it a democracy. How can we not have dialogue about this event? We do not have dialogue about this event. That YouTube video of the city council meeting last Wednesday, after I made my presentation, I went around the audience and passed out videos that I got from the Atlanta AIA thing, and people, they want to go, yeah, I'd like to look at it, but, their chin ducks a little. They want to keep their head down. They don't want the person next to them to see that they're accepting a video. There's something spooky about this self-censorship that we see all around us. Don't touch that topic. Don't talk to me about that. We have to be quiet about it. My best analogy is when you have sexual abuse in a family. The brothers and sisters will be aware, the mom will be aware, the dad is screwing the daughter, and everybody knows it's happening, but nobody talks about it. It's a family secret. We do it with sex abuse, we do it with alcoholism, we do it with drug addiction, we do it with violence. We do it with violence in a family. Keep it quiet. And that's what we are doing nationally. We all feel guilt about these millions of innocent people we have killed. What do we do with that guilt and shame? Well, denial. It's not happening here. Don't talk about it. And that's what I'm trying to break through. And filing and running for office, in America, political process is still sacred. If you're a candidate, I go to these candidate forums and I say, this war is a fraud. Well, people look at me and they go, holy cow, this is almost criminal. This guy's un-American, but he's a candidate. If some jumped up district attorney or some police chief or some military something or other, somebody wanted to intimidate me because of my 9/11 truther dialogue, I'm a candidate. I hand them my card and say, hey, listen, brother, I'm talking about this. I'm a candidate for the U.S. House of Representatives. If you try to jack me around, you could lose your job. And it's true. Being a candidate is still a sacred thing in America. Hell, look at Donald Trump. I mean, look at the ink that numbskull is getting. Well, he's a candidate. He gets to be outspoken. He gets to say the craziest things and get away with it. And so that's why I ran for office, and that's why I'm going to run again. I'm trying to figure out which party to. I'm thinking about changing my registration to Republican and making as much noise as I can in the primary season for the United States Senate. There'll be a lot of noise about, there'll probably be 6 or 8 candidates that file as Republicans to run against Ron Wyden, and it will be a very contentious primary season because Wyden is so powerful, so wealthy, he's been in the Senate so long, and he's an AIPAC darling. He's unbeatable. So I'm thinking I may get more ink as a Republican primary candidate than as an independent candidate in the general election next November. You know, I ran as an independent for the U.S. House of Representatives, and the media in Oregon did not print a sentence about the 5th district race. There was an incumbent Democrat, a Republican challenger who was a county commissioner in one of the largest counties in Oregon, and there was an independent candidate. We had a very active and a vibrant race, but the media did not print a sentence about the race because there was a 9/11 candidate in that race. See, that's the way they handle 9/11. Do not, if you just don't use the phrase, do not put 9/11 in print. You know, they do it around the anniversary for a couple of days, but then that's it. No discussion, no dialogue, keep it quiet. But we still have venues where democratic process happens. We have our town council meetings, we have our school board meetings, we have county commission meetings, which invite public interaction. We have our town squares, we have our farmers market. I do a table with the Third Tower videos and pamphlets, and I have a couple of big signs that I put out under our Saturday market every Saturday. And the Saturday market has a free speech zone where they allow anybody to talk about anything. We have abdicated, and this is one of the problems that we have in this country. We've abdicated democratic process and democratic behaviors to our media and to our television. That's where political discourse happens. Well, that's not right. It should be happening in my neighborhood. It should be happening 6 blocks from here at my Saturday market. It should be happening at my city council meeting. It should be happening at my school board meeting. This is still democracy, and we are the people that should be speaking, not these politicians and these TV personalities. So anyway, that's where I'm coming from. That's what motivates me, and I don't know whether it's age or what has. Well, I think I'm just an outspoken kind of a person. If I see something that I don't think is working, I have to say we got to do something. I can't watch I'm not the kind of a person that's going to watch a kid float down this creek and say, well, I'm not going to go get him. I got a new pair of pants on. I'm going in the water. To hell with the new white pants. A lot of people in our culture do not do that. They stand back and let somebody else, you just think of all the times in our big cities where you'll watch people step over the poor guy that's laying on the sidewalk, drunk and hungry and, knocking on death's door, and people walk around him, step over him, don't see him. I can't do that, Andy. I got to go up and tap him on the shoulder and ask him if he's okay. He says, yeah, leave me alone. Fuck off. I'll say, okay, that's it. But I can't step over him. I can't walk by. I've got to speak up, speak out. So, and you're that way too. Richard Gage was here in Salem for our World Trade Center 7 Awareness Day, and when I gave Richard a ride back to the airport, and we both talked about Martin Luther King, and I thought, yep, we're the same. We're cut from the same cloth. We have a deep, strong moral compass with a real strong needle. And anyway, that was very, meeting people like Richard. When I went to Atlanta and met those people, that encourages me to do more. So, and I'm in this for the long haul until we get this thing turned around, or until they cover me up.
Well, I know we can expect a lot more from you, too. You talked about people's reaction when you hand DVDs to them and that their head goes down. That's interesting, I've never really taken a mental photograph of that situation, but I've been in it before, and I think you're right. I think that that is what happens. I had a friend who, doesn't really like to talk about this, but there's been times when I've seen him. I don't see this person very often in my life, but I used to have a very strong friendship with this person, and has become more open about it over the years and is willing to listen. And I offered to give this person a DVD, and he said, no, I don't want to carry that through my luggage in the airport. I think he was serious too. I don't think he was making that up, and it's just funny, the irrational fears. When I first started out talking about this and doing some activism, I didn't know what to do, so I started a MySpace page and started updating it every day. And I was dating someone who was concerned about me updating a MySpace page from my laptop and using her Wi-Fi because she's worried that the government's watching it. It's like people have these irrational fears based off of this, or they just don't want to be seen acknowledging this. They don't want to be seen as being part of the group that has been shunned by the establishment. And it's amazing how the opinion makers, how they just have this power and wield it over the minds of the public. Generally speaking, when I talk to people privately, most of them agree with me. Anybody who's been exposed to this issue and looked at it with any bit of time agrees with me. But there's just something keeping people back. And you talked about TV's influence on the general public. You look at how things were 100 years ago. Most people focused on the local politics because that was what most directly affected them. They didn't even know what the president looked like in a lot of cases until they saw sketched out pictures of them in the newspapers, maybe 3 months after the person was elected, right? So now we have television and everything is based off of appearance. We have more information seemingly available to us, but it also gives power to a few people to be able to mold that message that gets out to everybody else. So there's a trade-off, and in my opinion, I don't even think it's an even trade-off. I think we've suffered in a way as a result of it. I'm not saying get rid of technology or any kind of philosophy like that. I mean, technology is very helpful to us, but we need to make it more available, and this is my opinion, of course, make it more available to more people so that you have different sources of information coming out. The internet's helped us do that in a lot of ways, and you can see that's why they're trying to regulate that and censor that more and more as we move forward. I don't want to get into anything that is going to be too painful for you, but just for the benefit of our audience so they can fully know the story that you told me. You talked about your son. Did he join the military after 9/11?
No, he took his life 2 weeks after 9/11.
Okay.
Eric committed suicide 2 weeks after 9/11. And there were other issues there, but 9/11 was, in my mind, that was certainly the catalyst. If we could have gotten past that, and if we could have gotten past September without a 9/11, Eric would still be here. I am convinced of that. I'm certain of that. It was a complete shock and surprise to all of us. All of his friends, all of his family, his sisters, his mother. It was a shot in the dark. We did not see that in Eric at all. And, I've heard that story so many times from people about the profound effect that 9/11 had on individuals and families and communities. I mean, my God, look at what's happened since then. I mean, Jesus criminy, the estimate, the lowest number I've ever heard is 800,000 deaths in Asia. The highest number I've heard is 4 million deaths. UNICEF, nationalpriorities.org, the International Red Cross, 80% of the victims in Asia are women and children. That's the low number. Some sources say 90% of the casualties are women and children. I mean, that is just, how can this continue? We're starting our 15th year. I mean, what kind of a place is this? How in the hell did we get this way? It is so spooky that, but anyway, once you become aware of the crime of 9/11, then you become aware of the crime, how did I get this way? It's not only the Department of Defense and the self-censorship. I mean, once you become aware of 9/11, you begin to see this criminality throughout our society. And that's what when I said I wished I didn't know. I see it in so many other places, and I see it in myself. That ignorance about Marvin was much more comfortable. So anyway, that's why I say silence is criminal, and for some of us, it's suicidal. Awareness is a curse. Einstein had said that those who have the privilege to know have the duty to act. Well, if I could go back, I'd just as soon not have that duty. Hey, let me tell you about the freeway experience. I have a 9-foot sign, Rethink 9/11. Did you know a third tower? Did you know the third tower came? I hang that sign on the overpass at Salem. I park my car. It's only a 50-yard walk up to the overpass, and I put the sign on the inside of the wire fence. And I rigged the thing up. It takes less than a minute to get out of my car and get that thing up there. And then I watch people, and I point at the sign. I stand on the right next to the sign, and I point at it. And sometimes I've tried it in a T-shirt. I've tried it in a collar shirt. I've tried it in a tie. I've tried different appearances to see if I can elicit more response. And what I found, in Salem, at the D Street overpass, where cars are going 75 miles an hour and these truck drivers are by themselves, they honk. About every 10th truck gives me a honk. I've done this at the downtown Portland, where the traffic is, there's a big interchange and a catwalk that goes over the freeway, a brand new walkway for pedestrians. The cars are going 5 miles an hour, 10 miles an hour, much fewer honks. When people are going slow, they have this social pressure of somebody next to them. They don't want to act out. They don't want to be demonstrative. But when they're alone going 75 miles an hour, they are willing to be demonstrative. Anyway, I thought that was so I have a much more affecting performance at the D Street overpass, showing the sign to people alone at 75 miles an hour, than I do showing the sign to 10 times the number of people in this big interchange area in downtown Portland. You get much more action from the faster traffic by themselves than you do when people are next to one another. There's something about we are a herd animal, and we want to, before we'll step out, we'll look left and look right. What are the people next to me doing? Are they tattooed? Are they wearing tennis shoes? Are they wearing a necktie? Do they wear a baseball hat? We want to be invisible, I guess. But anyway, that's what we're up against with this 9/11 thing. And these social psychologists, these warmongers who develop these plans in the basement of the Pentagon, they know this about us. I'm convinced that when they began planning 9/11 in the early 90s, when they saw that Russia was no longer going to become our enemy, and they began to plan for an event like 9/11, they had 2015 on their notepad. Where are we going to be in 2015 years out? Where are we going to be 20 years out? Where are we going to be 25 years out? That's what we're up against. The thing we have now, though, is they could not see the World Wide Web over the horizon. They're looking at this information sharing that's going on, but I don't know where you are, Andy. You're on the East Coast or the West Coast?
I'm on the West Coast now.
Yeah, well, here you and I met through, the sharing of information, and this thing is spinning out of control. Those guys in the basement of the Pentagon they are deathly afraid of what's happening now. There are millions and millions of people in this country who are aware of what happened and what is happening. And it's a powder keg. It's a powder keg. There's going to be I don't know if there's an RFK in the wings, a real moralistic, ethical politician that's going to stand up, and it's going to be a spark in the magazine of a ship, and this thing's going to go sky high. I think the people are out there. When I go out and talk, and Wednesday I do a farmer's market, Saturday I do a farmer's market. We're going to do this Portland Courthouse Square thing on the anniversary. I'm going to try to do a booth at the State Fair, and I think the State Fair is going to be a tremendous, if I can afford it. I think they're very expensive. But those people, the State Fair audiences are, classes in America, these are not your upper middle class people that go to state fairs. They're the kind of people who don't have as much to protect. People who have less to protect have the ability to look up. They can lift their chin up a little bit and look at. People that have six-figure incomes do not want to touch 9/11. They've got something to protect. So I think this is. I want to go to the State Fair crowd and see what kind of a response I get. And 9/11Truth crosses all political boundaries. I have NRA people that I get along with very well now around 9/11. I have people who are, about other political topics we could never see eye to eye, but on 9/11, there's a common ground of sharing and understanding that that I find very encouraging. And I think 9/11 is this country's best shot at saving democracy. I mean, this is an opportunity that if we let this window go by, the scientific dictatorship will be, it will overwhelm us. We will not recover. The era of Big Brother, which is here now. You know, I just heard the other day on this whistleblowers, there were 7 whistleblowers at the National Press Club, and the last guy that talked, I think he was an NSA attorney who became a whistleblower. And he said in the mid-'80s, there were 3,000 SWAT raids on private American homes in America. 3,000 in the 80s. In 2014, there were 80,000 SWAT raids on private American homes. And his point was that the police state isn't coming. It's not something that we have to be careful. You know, it's not over the horizon. It has happened. It has happened. We are now, 5 or 8 years beyond the establishment of the police state. So, 9/11 it's our best window of opportunity to arrest this authoritarian war, kill the Asian children for money, this insane ethic that we've embarked upon. I mean, it's been going on since World War II, but we just haven't been aware of it. We believed Ronald Reagan when he invaded Grenada, and they blew up the power station, and, 2 weeks later, Bechtel gets the contract to rebuild the power station. What the hell's going on there? Well, that shit they don't get away with anymore. We know what's going on in Syria, why they're blowing up bridges and blowing up power stations and blowing up silos. We know exactly what they're doing. Halliburton or Bechtel, they're going to get the contract to rebuild that stuff. It's money. It's a goddamn money ethic that's, but we're aware of it now, which is an opportunity. Yesterday I went to the Siletz. We have a powwow in Oregon. These Indians come from all over the United States for this big, we have a very wealthy tribe in Oregon that built a casino about 15 years ago. But the Native Americans, if they made a tribal decision, part of that decision was the 7th generation. They had to look out 7 generations with any tribal decision. Andy, we hardly think of our own children when we make a decision about our, where we're going to spend tax money. It's insane that and I don't know how to explain it, how we got to this place, but we have an opportunity to turn 180 degrees because of 9/11.
Now, I want to make sure we get time to talk about the city council encounter. It's on YouTube again, and we'll have a link to it in the description of this podcast. Set up the scene here. What gave you the idea? Tell us about the experience. How hard was it to get an audience with the city council?
No, it's very easy. I did it in Salem last spring, and you go into I go to the city council meetings probably twice a year over something to do with my business. And I just decided, I think I began to participate with Architects and Engineers presenter team. And I think that spurred me to do it in Salem, in my town. And you go to the city council and you just sign up, sign your name, your address, and what you want to address the council. And then at the end of the council meeting, the mayor will say, okay, we have for general discussion Marvin Sannes, and you go up to the microphone and you get 3 minutes. So I showed the video and made a 2-minute talk that ended up being about 3 or 4 minutes, and I had to be cut off, and I wasn't very well disciplined, and I went off on the poppy crop in Afghanistan. I think why we're in Afghanistan because of the $60 billion poppy crop. I talked about the epidemic and heroin addiction in Salem. Anyway, I just lost my way. So I decided to do, I want to do these city councils in all these cities in the Willamette Valley to spur some interest in World Trade Center 7. So I called the Portland City Council and I said, I want to deliver, and Portland does, for general open topics like this, I think they do one a month. And so at the Portland City Council, I was the first one on the calendar because I talked to them like 2 months ago. So I had everybody's attention. I was the first one there. And it was the same format. I got to show the 1-minute video, and then I let the video play on mute as I deliver my 2-minute speech. But in the Portland City Council meeting, I was very disciplined. I wrote out my script, and I practiced it many times to make sure I had the time under 2 minutes. The talk was going to be under 2 minutes. But I only got through, I got about 2/3 of the way through, and they cut me off because I'd run out of time. The bell went off. They started the time when I touched the back of the chair to sit down. So the next one I do, and I'm going to do one in Corvallis, will be my next target, and it will be I'll do a much better job. You know, the first time you do something, you're at the mercy of your emotions. You're at the second time you do it, you get something cleared up and you do it much better. The third time you do it, the fourth time you do it. I'm looking forward to the 6th or 8th time I do one of these things.
I was going to say, I thought you did a great job with it. I think the fact that you had stuff written out ahead of time is very helpful, and some people might not like the idea of that. They might think that, oh, you're going to look like a robot reading it off, but I know what happens. I mean, I've made public speaking mistakes throughout lifetime, even before 9/11 happened or before I woke up to 9/11Truth, and you just start, I don't know, I mean, there's something different about standing in front of a crowd, everybody's looking at you, and it can be very easy to lose your way, like you said. And if you got everything laid out, go ahead.
He did just a super job with the video. You know, he zoomed in on those two counselors, and you could see how uncomfortable the one guy at the, you know, as I'm facing him, he would have been on the left. That guy was very, very uncomfortable with this topic. And then there was a guy on the far right who was, you know, he did a bunch of paperwork and he looked at, you could see him look at it intently for about 10 seconds, and you could just see it on his body language that, oh man, this is uncomfortable. But the mayor looked at that video intently. He was paying attention, and that's what made me feel very good about this venue of the city council. And I'll add this too, we got a letter addressed to the mayor of Portland from a guy in Melbourne, Australia, who saw the video of my presentation and sat down and, you know, tapped out an email to the mayor of Portland and saying, and he signed off as a watcher. It was a very professional, very well-written letter about that presentation to the city council. But anyway, having the YouTube, JT is a videographer in Portland that is very, very good. We did that at 9:30 in the morning, Wednesday morning, and JT had it on YouTube that evening. So, and he says he'll do anything for 9/11 for nothing. If it's 9/11 related, he'll do it for nothing, and he's as good as they get.
Now, why do you think it's important for the city councils to hear this? What can the city councils do?
Well, what I hope to do in my town is I've got a truther on the city. One of our councilors in Salem, Oregon is a truther. And I've talked to him, I think, 4 times now about introducing a resolution just to get it. If he would introduce a resolution and they would have a debate within the council, And boy, if we could get that on tape, like the debate they had at the AIA convention in Atlanta last May, if we could get a debate like that in a city council chamber and get it on tape and get it on YouTube, oh man, that's what I'm hoping to do. That's what I'm doing at these city council meetings. I'm trying to find one where this may work, where we can, introduce it. That this council passes a resolution, and they do that all the time. Political bodies do it all the time. The Oregon State Legislature will pass House Resolution, 4990, and they will say, we support Campfire Girls of America. The Oregon House of Representatives supports cookie sales. They do that all the time, and city councils can do that. The city council could pass a resolution simply saying, we are uncomfortable with the dialogue in America about our 15th year fighting wars in third world countries. Not even mention 9/11. Just say we're sick of war. The city of Salem passes a resolution such and such, and we just simply say we are sick of fighting wars in third world countries. What the hell is going on with a country like this invading and occupying third world countries? Yeah, we could get our city council to open a dialogue about our insane foreign policy. That may be a smarter way to go, to talk about war and then get to the cause of these wars. Rather than, 9/11 is the CIA or the Department of Defense, they have made 9/11 a hot button. If you use that phrase, you are cut out of the discussion, whatever the discussion is. It's like a sex joke at a church picnic. Any place you bring up 9/11, you're going to silence. People are going to look at their shoes. Nobody's going to talk. It's just like a fart in church. It's just going to end everything. But that's what we're up against.
Now, you are so good at coming up with ideas for simple things done well every day. It's a point I raise all the time on this show. The small things we can do all the time, by routine, by habit, almost like a monk in a monastery all the time, that reach out to someone, all right? Because you have no idea who you're actually reaching with the information. I came across a video that was purposely misfiled on a video comic site. So, you have no idea the person that you're awakening and what they're going to end up doing.
Do something. Just think of everything you've ever done. You do something because you saw somebody do something. If somebody sees Andy Steele speak out, they're, 6 months later, they're thinking about speaking out, and they'll go back and think of your example. That's what we do for one another. We just, and actually, that's all we can do for one another, is just be good examples of speaking up and speaking out. And actually, I got that phrase from David Chandler. Speak up, speak out. I think that's the title of his web. I use that phrase all the time now. Speak up, speak out, and I got it from him. So,
what are some small activities? You mentioned the freeway blogging, and of course, speaking at city councils. What are some other small ideas for activities, or even bigger ideas, that people can do locally that don't involve having to, petition Congress or go on that level, but just things within their jurisdiction or their local area that they can do about the 9/11 controlled demolition issue?
Okay, I probably 3 times a week I go into a little coffee shop across from Starbucks. I don't go to Starbucks anymore. I'm boycotting Starbucks as part of the, I forget what they call it, the thing Hillary Clinton is against, the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. You're boycotting. So I don't go to Starbucks. I'm boycotting Starbucks. But when I go across the street to the Beanery, I get a coffee, and then I walk across with some flyers. 9/11, do you know a third tower came down? And I'll have a half a dozen of them in my hand, and I'll stand outside of Starbucks And I spend about 5 minutes, sometimes 10 minutes, and people walk in and out. I say, hey, you know about Building 7? And I'll show them the brochure, and, about every sixth one will look at it and say, no, what is that? And, about every 10th or 12th one will take a brochure, and I just do it for 5 minutes, and then I go take my hot coffee, go back, get in my car, and go on about what I was doing. But spending that 5 minutes, it's spooky how this works, but if I spend 5 minutes at 10 o'clock on a Wednesday morning, 4 o'clock Wednesday afternoon, I will feel myself motivated to do something else. Doing one little thing gets me to do one bigger thing. And I think the same thing happens with each of us. If I do one little thing, somebody else is going to do one little thing. And that's why I think it's so important to, the phrase you just used, like the monk in the monastery, the 7 times the Benedictines pray every day. I want to get to the place of feeling motivated every day to do an hour a day at 911Truth. Well, how am I going to get up to an hour? I do 5 minutes here. I do 20 minutes on the freeway. The farmer's market, I used to do 2 hours every Saturday. That was too much for me. I'm 70 years old. It would wear me out for the whole day. So now I just go there for an hour. And what I've done by just doing it for an hour, I'm far better organized. I take my little car with the sign on top, park it. I have a small card table. In one load, the card table, the load of some DVDs, some brochures, the laptop, and then I have a lawn sign, Rethink 9/11 lawn sign. I get all that in one load. Take it up there, I set it up, and there I'm ready to go. Probably takes 2 minutes from the time I park the car to I've got the table set up, and I'm standing there with a brochure in my hand. And I stay for 45 minutes for an hour and reverse what I did and load up the car and drive home. And anyway, my point is doing little things often generates more little things more often. And I'm developing a routine of, and I'm going to get better at finding ways to do this so that it supports itself. This Portland Courthouse Square event, it's going to be a big deal. We're going to go from 3 till 11 and start showing the World Trade Center 7 coming down on a 7-foot screen out in the middle of this square as soon as it's dark enough to see it well. But it's going to cost me about $900. And I think a year from now, next time I do a 9/11 anniversary event, I'm going to find a venue that is as efficient as Portland Courthouse Square, but I'm going to do it for $50 instead of $900. And I can show somebody else what I did, what I'm doing, and it only costs $50.
Well, we're going to have to leave it there. Unfortunately, we are out of time in our allotted hour here, but Marvin, it's been great listening to you. You're an inspiration to me. I know you're an inspiration to other people. You're going to be an inspiration to those who have heard about you for the first time after listening to this podcast, and I know I'm going to have you back, so thank you so much for coming on 9/11 Freefall.
Yeah, good. It's been fun. It's been fun. Thanks, Andy.
This program's on every Thursday night on No Lies Radio at 10 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Pacific. You can also download MP3s of this show from the Internet Archive by going to 911freefall.com. This is Andy Steele saying have a great week and good luck.